Hey, if you're considering moving to a new state, man, that can be really overwhelming. You've got to figure out schools for the kids and where you're going to work and where you're going to shop and eat. And most importantly, where you're going to live. Like, what kind of house do you want to live in? How much can you get for the money? What part of town has the kinds of houses you like and the kinds of restaurants and schools you like? It can be super, super overwhelming. And so today I want to talk through the top 5 things that people who are considering buying a house in another state should consider before they buy that house. Hey there, I'm John Glutch. I am the team leader of the Glutch Group, and we have sold thousands of homes, and hundreds of those have been to people who were moving from out of state, people coming from a different place, moving to the Phoenix metro area. And so we've done lots and lots of this and help people walk through the process. And today I want to share those 5 things that you really need to think about as you start this process. Now, the first one is getting yourself a realtor. This will sound self-serving because we're real estate agents, but it really does help. There's no substitute for local knowledge. I know personally I'm doing this right now. I'm buying a home up near a little lake, and first thing I did was call a real estate agent. I'm going to explain exactly how I found that person and what I would do if I was you, because you just need somebody who knows the area who is willing to take the time on the phone with you to kind of acquaint you with what's going on in the local area. And a real estate agent is the perfect person to do that. They've sold homes, they've been all over town, and they're the perfect place to start. But not just any real estate agent. Here are a few tips on how to find the right real estate agent. First of all, you want to find someone who's sold lots of houses, and ideally houses all over the place in the area you're moving to. Most people aren't moving to one little specific niche of town. They don't have it kind of that dialed in. They could use some advice on, hey, here's what I want to spend. Here are the kind of schools I want and the kind of shopping or lifestyle I want. Where should I go? And a good real estate agent who's sold lots of houses all over town really can help guide you in that process. And so it's so important, I think, to find somebody who sold lots of houses all over town. And with teams these days, you're finding more and more that option where, because like on our team, we've got, one of our guys grew up on the west side of Phoenix his whole life. He knows that area inside and out. Another guy grew up in Scottsdale. We've got we've got people for all over town, depending on what people are preferring and kind of what they want. So find someone with a breadth of knowledge and who's sold lots of homes. And then what you want to do too is check reviews. So these days there's reviews for everything, right? Laundry machines and, pads of paper, whatever you can dream up, there are reviews on those things. And real estate agents are no different. So you want to find someone who's got a lot of good reviews. You can check those on Zillow or Yelp, these different websites that track down how people have experienced these real estate agents. Those are definitely worth checking out. Find someone who's got some great reviews. So that's step 1. Find a great realtor with a breadth of knowledge who's sold a lot of houses, has some great reviews. That's a good place to start, and get on the phone with them. Start a chat, and I'll take you to the next step next. So tip number 2 is to plan a trip. So once you've got a good real estate agent on the phone, one of the things they should ask you is, do you have a trip plan to, in our case, Phoenix? Are you coming on out? And I suggest you do that. Now, if you're an investor buyer, sometimes we help investor buyers who never end up in town. They're going to stay where they live. That's a different scenario. That can be done totally remote. Not a bad idea there, and it's definitely possible. Some investors like to come see what they're buying, but not all. But if you're going to move to that area, I would suggest plan a trip. And you want to do that for a couple reasons. One is there's no substitute for getting in there and actually going to see the properties. Second is it'll put a little heat under you, a little fire to set a deadline and actually get to work. It's easy to procrastinate this because it can feel so overwhelming, but having a trip on the books planned really does help get things moving. When you plan that trip, one of 2 options. One is to plan a visit specifically to shop for homes. And if you do that, that's great. I suggest you pick a hotel near roughly the area of town you decide you want to be in. And I think that's a great way to do it. Or if you're going to move, and kind of set up temporary housing, that's fine too. And then shop while you're living in your temporary housing. So I do suggest that. It's not a bad idea to come out and rent for kind of month to month, lots of places, extended stay hotels, Airbnbs, different options for that. Just a landlord who's willing to do a month to month lease. That's not a bad idea. And then you've got the flexibility and the timing to go shop. So one way or another, you want to plan a trip and have a deadline of when it is that you're going to show up in town. So that's step 2. All right, item number 3 on my list of things that you have to do before you buy a home is to begin looking at specific homes for sale. So it's one thing to talk about areas of town and what you like generally, and that'll be really helpful part of the process. But now it's time to start actually looking at houses, because sometimes people will call and they'll say, they want this great area of town they think is just wonderful and they've heard all these great things about it. And we go, okay, great. So what are you looking to spend? And their dollar amount is nowhere near what it would cost to get into that neighborhood. So it's good that we start that discussion and go, okay, here's what we want to spend. Here are the kind of houses we want. Or maybe they can afford a home in that area, but it's going to be tiny because it's an expensive part of town. So they end up going, well, Actually, I don't mind living, 10 miles east of there because I get twice as much house or whatever. Start to actually look at specific homes. You've probably done some of this on Zillow already, on these websites, but it would be great to set up a portal with your real estate agent. Every realtor is going to have access to this where we can dialogue back and forth. We'll start sending you properties through our system that you can give us feedback on. And that's the next part of this that's so helpful, is letting us know what you love, what you don't love. That way we can really narrow it down, and we might, after a little while, go, hey, with what you're telling me, I think maybe someone was looking at Chandler. We might say, hey, I think you might actually find more of what you like in Scottsdale or in Mesa. And we find that out by having the conversation back and forth. And a great way to facilitate that conversation is we send people listings every day. We automate this system. It just kind of rattles them off when the new listings come available. And then we start a dialogue based on that process. So that's the next step, setting up that search and starting to look at properties, get some good dialogue back and forth on what you like, what you don't like, so we can really dial that in for you. All right, the fourth thing you want to do before you go out and purchase a home out of state is get pre-qualified. I highly recommend you do this before you take your trip, because many sellers now, the market's very hot, but this is not uncommon even in cooler markets. They want you to have a pre-qualification letter before they'll even let you in their house. And so you don't want to show up in Phoenix with not having talked to a lender, and now you can't even see homes. So that's the next step, is get a pre-qualification letter from a lender. This is free, 10 minutes on the phone. Sometimes they'll need some documentation to prove, but it's, easy stuff to get, down the road. There'll be this painful part where you give the lender 100 different pieces of documentation. But for now, let's get the basics started. And I recommend you get a couple quotes. We have a great lender that we love, we refer out, and we always say, hey, just get a free quote, compare it to whatever whoever you've used in the past or whoever you like, and see what's cheaper. Maybe get 2 or 3 options. You probably don't need 10, but a couple is probably good due diligence to make sure you're not overpaying for your loan. So that's super helpful and a critical part of the process. It also helps you understand what you can afford. So maybe you thought you could afford a $300,000 house, but actually you can afford a $500,000 house because payments are lower than you thought. Interest rates are super low right now. So worth checking out to make sure you get dialed in on exactly what you can afford, and you can go and look at properties, and sellers will let you right on in with your pre-qualification letter. All right, the fifth and final step is to go actually see properties. And I've got a couple tips for you in that process. As you go to start looking at properties, if you have time, ideally in your schedule, go drive the properties, because maybe you got properties all over town, 10 miles apart from each other. We have people sometimes driving 30, 40 miles between the homes they want to see. And they end up in one part of town going, I don't even like it over here. Like, I don't like this neighborhood. There's no point in going in to see the house because I'm not even wanting to stop the car. Like, I'm just ready to keep driving. So save yourself a ton of time by just getting, okay, here's 8 or 10 or 12 houses that I'm interested in, different parts of town, and just dial it in. Go take a look at those properties, drive them by. You'll probably get that list narrowed down to 5 or 6. And now we're talking. Now it's, okay, you can go in, you actually get appointments with the sellers to see those properties. You take your time, see what you like, what you don't like, and you really get a little more specific. So I suggest you drive first if at all possible. The second tip is don't pick too many in one day. It can get so overwhelming to have, 15 houses to go look at. They just blur. It's very hard to discern. And nobody picks the 3rd best house, let alone the 15th best house you saw. So just dial that in, kind of narrow that list down. That way you're not overwhelming yourself and just getting exhausted. We run out of, our decision-making power at a certain point. So I suggest you really narrow that list down. Don't go see too many, 6, 8 houses is about the max before people start to go a little cross-eyed. And then the last tip is hurry, but don't hurry. In a hot market, if you find a house you love, you're going to have to hurry. You're going to have to jump on it. That thing's going to be sold tomorrow. You can't sleep on it. That's not how this works. But you can sleep on it. You can take your time once we get you the property. So we always suggest to people, if you love the house, let's get it what we call tied up. Let's write an offer, get that offer accepted, because there's 4 other people behind you who want to buy this property. Once we get that offer accepted, now you've got a 10-day inspection period to really think about it, sleep on it, call Uncle Frank, your financial advisor, whoever you want to talk to make sure this is a great idea. All that stuff is wonderful and really important, but don't do it to the extent that you lose out on the property. You got that 10-day inspection period during which you can cancel. There's no cost or fees at all. You just get to cancel, move on, and go on to the next property if this one's not for you. So it'll feel very fast in the beginning, but we suggest you go for it. And then let's do that due diligence in the next 10 days. So those are my 5 tips for what you need to do before you buy a property out of state. It can be very overwhelming, but trust me, it's absolutely doable. We help people every year, dozens and dozens of people who buy these properties from out of state and end up being super happy. Phoenix is a great place to live. You're going to love it. Just make sure you follow those steps and you'll be in good shape. Thanks again. Reach out to us if you'd like to get your process started purchasing a home, whether you're moving from out of state or in state. We would love to get that process started, get you a list of properties, kind of walk you through the different parts of town and help you understand what would be a great fit for you. Just shoot out a message or give us a call at 480-378-6700. We'd be happy to help you out.